Have you ever wanted to experience the beauty of the rainforest firsthand? Or see a peaceful underwater scene with fish in their natural habitat? Well, vivariums can do just that. A vivarium is a bioactive, meaning self-sustaining, enclosure with plants, animals, and an insect cleanup crew. Vivariums can be a land or forest scene, which is called a terrarium, an underwater scene, which is an aquarium, or both, which is called a paludarium. I have built 4 bioactive enclosures so far, and I've done a lot of research to see what works and what doesn't, and I'm still learning and experimenting. A lot of work goes into making these beautiful miniature naturescapes, from the background to the false bottom and substrate layer to the planting. The first step to your build is going to be your background. I recommend doing a clay background, which uses clay cat litter, sphagnum moss, and cypress mulch. The clay method is recommended by frog enthusiasts on the Dendroboard discussion page because it is more authentic and the plants can grow into it as opposed to the spray foam method. As you can see in the video, I am working these ingredients together with water until it becomes a bit harder than Play-Doh and it holds its shape when I squish it together. For application of the clay background, I am pressing in the clay with my palm or my fist and my knuckles, using my knuckles to spread out the clay onto the background. This is my cat Mazikeen. He kept trying to photobomb, so here he is. Next up is the ground layers, which has 4 different steps. The false bottom, which is leca, geotextile fabric or cocoa husk, ABG mix or soil, and sphagnum moss, which only needs to be used if you are going to have your frogs in your vivarium. The first layer of your ground layers is your false bottom. I used leca for my false bottom, which are little clay balls. The false bottom is important because it allows the water to drain from the soil, it filters the water, and it grows beneficial bacteria for the vivarium. The next layer is the substrate barrier, which you can either use geotextile fabric or landscape fabric, or you can use what I used, which is cocoa fibers, which is the same material that is used to line hanging flower planters. As its name suggests, the substrate barrier is used for the purpose of separating the substrate from the leca or false bottom. The next layer is the substrate layer. For this, I used a modified version of the ABG mix, which is Atlanta Botanical Gardens mix, which is sphagnum moss, cocoa coir, cypress mulch, and reptibark, as well as charcoal, perlite, and worm castings. Be sure to slant your substrate layer slightly upwards to give it more of a look of depth. I recommend for your setup adding some pieces of cool wood that you find, driftwood or sticks and twigs. Adding those will make your setup look a lot more visually interesting and dynamic. The last substrate layer is going to be sphagnum moss. Like I mentioned earlier, the sphagnum moss layer is only necessary for if you're going to have frogs. It will keep the soil from sticking onto the frogs. Now that we are done with the substrate layers, we are going to get on to planting. Here I'm showing you how to rehydrate sphagnum moss and then wrap it around the bromeliads, which are epiphytes, meaning that they are non-parasitic plants that grow on trees. The plants are a very important part of your vivarium setup, and a lot of research needs to be done in order to find plants that are safe for the animal, meaning no harmful saps, plants that thrive in the setup's conditions, as well as whether their growth tendencies are climbing, crawling, trailing, or if they are epiphytes like the bromeliads. According to Josh's Frogs, the best plant species for a tropical vivarium are peperomia, pilea, ferns, mosses, bromeliads, anthuriums, and pothos. For my setup, I will be using all of these, along with some species of philodendron, syndapsis, hoya, and monstera. For the plants on the back wall, I am planting the roots in the soil and then pressing them into the clay up the back wall. These plants are obviously climbers, and they will continue growing into the clay and into the background. That brings me to an important point, which is when you are deciding what plants to put where, you need to consider what type of grower they are. Typically, plants that are found in the canopy are going to be epiphytes, as we talked about earlier. Plants that are on the walls are going to be climbers, and then plants in the foreground are going to be crawlers. Before planting each plant, I actually trimmed their roots off screen. According to gkvks.com, which is a gardening blog, trimming the roots will stimulate new growth, which can help your plants establish better and faster in their new environment. The next step to your vivarium is actually going to be a ground layer step, which is leaf litter. And leaf litter is very important because it provides something for the cleanup crew to decompose. It also provides a hiding spot for both the bugs and the animals that you will be having in your vivarium setup. The final step for your vivarium is adding isopods and springtails. Unfortunately, both isopods and springtails are out of stock right now in pretty much everywhere, or at least have very long shipment times. In addition to that, I already had springtails and some earthworms in my soil mix because I recycled it from a previous build. I will get isopods in the future, as well as poison dart frogs, to add to my setup, but I will unfortunately not be able to add it to this video. The construction of your vivarium, from the background to the ground layers to the planting, takes a lot of time and research, but the end result is something that you can be proud of and enjoy for a long time. And there you have it, your completed slice of nature sitting in your home. You can't stop me now.